Side 6, The Broken Bubble by Philip K. Dick. Continuing on page 198. Her cigarette glowed, and she studied it. She tapped it against the ashtray which she held, and she thought, "This is where I make my stand. This is where I put up my fight. For this. For what I have here." In the morning she got up early, at 7 o'clock, to telephone the station. Jim slept on. Without awakening him, she put on her robe, closed the door to the bedroom, and seated herself in the living room by the phone. "Hello," she said. "Mr. Haynes?"
"How have you been, Patricia?"
Haynes said in his formal voice.
"We've been concerned about you. Not a word from you in, 2 days?
"I'm better," she said. "Could I come in late?"
"You don't have to come in at all today," he said. "Don't come in until it's completely gone."
At first she could not imagine what he meant, and then she realized that he was talking about the flu. "Thanks," she said. "Maybe I'll wait until tomorrow. I don't want to give it to anybody."
"Is it that intestinal kind?"
"Yes," she said. "I was sick. At my stomach.
Cramps? That's the kind that's going around. Don't drink any fruit juices, just toast and eggs and custard, mild foods. No acids, tomatoes or pears or orange juice."
She thanked him and hung up. Returning to the bedroom, she tiptoed to the bed and saw that Jim was awake. "Hi," she said, kissing him.
"Hi."
He blinked owlishly. "You up?" "Stay in bed," she said. "I want to take some of my things back to my apartment and get some things that are still there."
"How do you feel?" he said.
"Much better."
"Your eye looks better."
While she was in the bathroom, she examined her eye. The swelling was gone, but it was black. The color, the deep smudge, remained. Maybe, she thought, forever. "I won't be gone long," she said to him. "You look so luxurious in bed. Stay there until I get back, okay?" Again she kissed him. As she drove along the early morning streets, she thought to herself that in some respects this was the best time of day. The air was cold, but it was bright. It smelled good, and it seemed to her to be healthier. The night fog was gone, and the haze had not yet arrived. Parking the Dodge before her old apartment building, she carried a suitcase upstairs. As rapidly as possible, she hung the clothes up in the closet, took what she needed, and, with the first armload, returned to the car. By the car waited a girl in a brown coat. Her legs were bare, and she had on flat slippers. In the morning sunlight, she frowned as she started toward Pat, her hands in the pockets of her coat. She squinted and, raising her hand, shielded her eyes. "I know her," Pat thought. "Who is she? I've seen her before." The girl said, "Where's Jim?" "He's at his place," she said. Her head buzzed, and she felt giddy. She did not feel frightened, only a little shocked to recognize her. "I've only seen you once in my life," she said. Rachel opened the car door for her. "Are you taking your things over to his place?" "Some," she said. "One more armload. I just saw you that time we came by that one night." Behind her, Rachel remained by the car. Patricia ascended the stairs, gathered up the rest of her things, and started back down. On the stairs, she halted to get her breath. Light streamed through the front door of the building, into the lobby. She saw Rachel, still at the car, still waiting for her. When she emerged, Rachel said to her, "Are you going over there now?" "Yes," she said, putting her armload into the back seat. "I'd like to come along." Protest was impossible. "Why not?" she said. "Get in." She switched on the ignition, and as she put the car in gear, Rachel got in beside her. At 8:30, she was back at Jim Briskin's apartment building. She and Rachel stepped out onto the sidewalk. She carried one armload, and Rachel carried the other. Together, they went upstairs to the apartment. She let herself and Rachel in with the key he had given her. He was out of bed, sitting at the kitchen table. In his blue bathrobe, his hair uncombed, he regarded her and Rachel with a mixture of expressions. "Hi," Rachel said. His head inclined, and then he said to Pat, "Did you get your things?" "What I needed," she said.
Most of it's here. Have you had breakfast?
No, he said.
Are you just sitting?
Rachel had gone to the living room window. Her coat over her arm, she stood, spectre-like, off to one side. Jim said to her, "What did you do about Art?"
When he showed up, I told him, and he went off,
Rachel said. You told him what?
That he couldn't come back.
Jim said, "Where'd he go?"
Over to the loft, I guess. I haven't seen him today. That was last night, real late.
Did you get any sleep?
A couple of hours.
Her words were pinched off. Did you talk to him at all? Did he tell you anything about it?
Rachel said, He had a lot he wanted to say.
But you didn't listen.
I listened to some of it.
Pat said,
He beat me up. No, Rachel said to her. He didn't beat you up. He hit you once, and that was all. Is that what you call getting beat up? His father used to beat up his mother, and sometimes he'd beat up Nat, his older brother. They were always fighting. Italians fight like that. Where we live, people all fight like that.
Getting up from the kitchen table, Jim walked into the living room. He lit a cigarette and offered Rachel the pack. She shook her head. Did you expect me to come back last night? He said.
No, Rachel said. I knew you would stay with her.
You never forgive people, Pat said.
You mean? What do I care about you?
Her tough little face glowed.
You know what the first thing you said to me was? The first thing when you came in the door and saw me?
I know, Pat said.
If I had been in the kitchen instead of Art, you would have taken me down to the store, not him.
Not exactly, she said. She began to unpack the things she had brought. Jim returned to the kitchen. He put bread into the toaster and laid out dishes and silverware. I'm going to eat, he said. Patricia said,
I brought over my oils. How do you feel about that?
She unfolded the small easel and unwrapped the tubes of paint and the turpentine and linseed oil in the palette.
I thought maybe I'd do some painting. Will the smell drive you out of the apartment?
No, he said from the kitchen.
What about the mess?
It's okay.
Excuse me, she said to Rachel.
In the bedroom, with the shades down, she changed to a pair of blue cotton trousers, Chinese trousers, and then she picked out a plaid sport shirt and buttoned it up, thinking how loose it was, how comfortable to work in. And then she identified the shirt as one of Art's. She had bought it for him to wear. A little hysterically, she shed the sports shirt and pushed it away in a suitcase. Instead, she put on a T-shirt, paint-smeared from her college days. In the living room, Rachel ignored the paints. She had not even taken off her coat.
Can I play some records? Patricia asked.
Go ahead, Jim said. At the stove, he was frying himself ham and eggs. Sinking down before the record cabinet, she examined the albums. At last, she pulled out an album of Bach Brandenburg concertos. The album held 4 of them, one after another, and with the records playing on the phonograph, she proceeded to mix the paints. Bach at 9 in the morning, Jim said.
Shall I take it off?
It's eccentric, he said.
I always liked it, she said. The Brandenburg concertos. You played them for me. We played them all the time.
Rachel said, What are you going to paint?
I don't know, she said levelly. I haven't decided. You're not going to paint me.
I don't want to paint you. On the easel, she arranged a square of fiber paper. Her brushes, gummy and stiff, had to be soaked. She placed them upright in a glass of turpentine. The smell of paint and turpentine filled the room, and she opened 2 of the windows. Jim disappeared into the bathroom. The whir of his electric razor startled her, and she thought how long it had been since she had heard an electric razor in the morning.
Did you stay here last night? Rachel said to her.
Of course she did, Jim said from the bathroom. What do you think I did? Leave her for Art to knock around? I'm keeping her with me, where she belongs. When she feels better and this thing isn't hanging over us, we're going to remarry. Rachel said,
And I can go to hell.
No, he said. He finished shaving and put on a white shirt and tie. His chin was smooth, his hair was combed. Now he unclipped a pair of pressed slacks from a hanger in the closet. "What then?" Rachel said. "You have a husband." "What about you?" He said, "I'm not your husband." "You are," Rachel said. She continued to look at him, but she said nothing more. "I feel so goddamn sorry for you," he said. "But this is just a long shot. It's too much of a long shot for me, Rachel." "You thought about it the first night you stayed with me." Cold morning air blew into the room from the open windows, and Patricia shivered. On her arms goose pimples formed. She stopped to rub them. She felt dizzy, from the paint fumes, she decided, and from not having eaten any breakfast. A drop of paint fell on the rug, and she realized, stricken, that she had forgotten to put down newspapers. Papers in piles were in the cupboard under the sink. She got a stack of them and spread them over the rug. Maybe, she thought, she should roll back the rug. How long it had been. She had forgotten how to go about it. When Jim came out of the bathroom, she said, "I better get the rug out of the way." "You going to dance?" "No, I don't want to get paint on it." "Paint in the kitchen," he said. He put on his coat. "Where are you going?" she said. "I'm taking Rachel home. She shouldn't be here. I'll be back. You go ahead and paint." Patricia said, "You don't know how long you'll be gone, I suppose." "If I get tied up," he said, "I'll call you." "Good luck," she said, studying her paints. "Same to you." He kissed her on the temple and then nodded Rachel toward the door. "Goodbye," Rachel said. The door shut after the two of them. She was alone in the apartment with her paints. On the phonograph, the stack of records had come to an end. She lifted them up onto the spindle and restarted them. The same music, she realized, but she did not care. She increased the volume, and then she kicked off her shoes and returned to painting. For an hour she worked. She involved herself in the picture. It was non-objective, an exercise to bring back to her the sense of the brushes and colors. But her touch remained clumsy, and at 10 o'clock she gave up and wandered into the kitchen for something to eat. How still the apartment was. After she had eaten, she returned to her painting. By now the picture was a failure, and she tossed the square of fiber paper aside. On a fresh square, she started over. She sketched a face, the spotty circle of a man's face. Jim Briskin, she decided. The picture was of him, but it did not look like him. The image had a muddied quality, as if the flesh were running together, slipping and sliding. The image, the face on the fiber paper, deteriorated until it was a grotesque, mask-like thing, feeble and infantile. She gave up and put the brushes into the glass of turpentine. Now the time was 12 noon, and he had not come back. She washed her hands. The records on the phonograph had long ago finished and been put back in the album. She got them out again and restarted them. With the music playing, she entered the bedroom and began searching through the dresser drawers. In a manila folder were letters and pictures that he had kept. After a minute, she located the photograph she wanted. It was a picture taken during a camping trip to Mount Diablo, and it showed him full face, smiling. In this picture, he did not look worried, and she liked him that way. He wore a canvas shirt, and behind him was the car they had owned, and their tent, and the rocks and brush of the mountainside. She herself had taken the picture. Her shadow fell across him. Propping a fresh square of fiber paper on the easel, she tacked the photograph beside it and began again. But still the picture did not come. At 1 o'clock she tossed the brush down, wiped her hands, and went into the kitchen for something to drink. On the tiled drain board she spread out the makings of the drink: the ice cube tray, the gin, the lemon, the tumbler and spoon, and the jigger glass. Holding the tray under the hot water, she smacked the metal with her hand. Ice cubes slid into the sink, and she put 2 of them in the tumbler. Onto the ice cube she poured gin, and then she added an inch or 2 of lemonade. Carrying the drink, she strolled about the apartment, humming with the music. Now she did not feel so lonely. She set the drink down on the arm of the couch and resumed painting. The smell of the paint blended with the smell of her drink. Her head began to ache, and she wondered if she wanted to paint after all. When her drink was gone, she returned to the kitchen for another. The ice cubes were still on the drain board, and she dumped them into the sink. They were half melted. Into the glass she poured gin and then water from the tap. Swirling the mixture, she seated herself at the kitchen table. For the first time in her life, the idea of suicide entered her mind. Once it was there, she could not get rid of it. She went about the kitchen, examining the knives in the drawers. Then she gave serious thought to the electricity, the wiring and outlets. What an awful thing, she thought. But the idea continued to revolve. It built itself up. She went back and forth through the apartment, seeking something to break into her mind. Hammer, chisel, drill, such as a dentist's drill cutting through bone. Splinters of bone flying. Enough, she thought. But it was not enough. She picked up her brush and tried to paint. The colors dazzled her. She pulled down the shades and painted in the half-light. Now the colors ran together, browns and grays and somber clouds like soot. She continued painting. The square became dark, and at last it was blotted out. All colors, she thought. In her mind, the schemes and ideas of suicide grew and became more elaborate, more extravagant, until she had considered everything. Putting down her brush, she went out of the apartment into the hall. The hall was deserted. She stood by the door, and after a long time a middle-aged woman passed by with rubbish for the disposal chute. "Good afternoon," Pat said. The middle-aged woman glanced at the open apartment door and then at the glass in her hand. Without answering her, the middle-aged woman went on. Enough, she thought. She put her glass down inside the apartment, and then she walked steadily down the hall to the stairs, down to the ground floor, down the front steps to the sidewalk, down the sidewalk, down the hill to the corner, to the liquor store. The polished tile floor sloped, and she walked gingerly to the counter. "You have any Rhine wine?" she asked. The first thing that came into her mind, something new in her mind. "Lots of it," the clerk said. He went to a shelf. While he was looking, she walked back out onto the sidewalk up the hill. On the hill she halted, getting her breath. Then she walked back to the apartment. The phonograph was on, but the records had ceased playing. She lifted them up onto the spindle and started them over. "Where are you?" she said to herself. Nobody answered. "Are you coming back?" she said. "You're not," she said, "and I know why not. I know where you are. I know who you're with." "I don't blame you," she said. "You're right." She picked up her brush and put the tip of it into the paint. In the darkness of the apartment, she painted. She put more darkness around her. She lifted darkness and carried it about the living room and the bedroom and into the bathroom and the kitchen. She took it everywhere. She brought it to each thing in the apartment, and after that, she turned it to herself. 19. Beside him in the car, Rachel said, "You don't have to go through any legal thing. Just stay with me, especially after I have the baby." "They'd send me to prison for life," Jim Briskin said. They were parked before her house, and he looked down the walk to the basement steps. He gazed out at the house, at the stores and people along Fillmore Street. "Is that why?" Rachel said. "Is that the reason?" "I can't marry a 17-year-old girl," he said, "no matter how I feel about her. Just tell me if that's the reason." He gave it serious thought. While he thought, Rachel kept her eyes fixed on him. She studied his face, his body, the way he sat, the clothes he was wearing. She was taking each part of him in, gathering and collecting him, every bit of him, tucking him away. "Yes," he said finally. "Let's leave then. Let's go down into Mexico." "Why?" he said. "Do they do that down there? Is that something you read in a magazine or saw in a movie?" Rachel said, "You know more than I do. Find out where we can go, where we can do it." "Oh, Rachel," he said. "What?" "I'll do it," he wanted to say. He almost said it. He almost told her. "You're too logical," he said. "You're too rational. I can't." "Suppose I talk with Pat." "Keep away from Pat. Don't go near her. She has enough troubles." "Do you think I'll hurt her?" "Yes," he said, "if you can. If you can figure out how.
I know how, Rachel said.
Do you want to?
Rachel said, I don't care about her. I care about you.
I'd be lying, he said, if I said I don't care about you. But she's the one who can't live by herself. You have an economic problem, but eventually you'll solve it. You'll be older and you'll earn more money. One of these days you'll have it worked out. We'll still be in the middle of our problems. It's a question of time, nothing else.
Rachel said, That's just a lot of words.
You don't want to hear it. That's why you say that.
I want to hear the truth. I don't want to hear what you think would be nice. I never knew you before, but now I know you, and I'm going to know you for the rest of your life. Isn't that so?
She pushed the car door open.
Usually I work in the morning. You didn't even ask me why I'm not working.
Why aren't you? He said.
What did you do, quit your job?
I'm off for a month. Pat's off indefinitely. I suppose you're through completely.
I switched with a girl, Rachel said. I'm working tonight instead of this morning.
When do you start?
At 8 o'clock tonight.
Then you have time to sit here.
I have all these errands. I have to get started on them. I have a lot to do.
She reached into her coat pocket.
Here's a note.
She passed him a folded slip of paper.
Take it and don't read it until you're driving home. Promise?
Notes, he said.
I'll see you.
She started off down the path toward the house. As soon as her back was to him, he unfolded the note and read it. On the paper were no words, no writing, only a drawing she had made. Probably she had gotten the idea from Pat in her painting. It was the drawing of a heart, and he understood from it that Rachel wanted to tell him that she loved him. Putting the note in his pocket, he got out of the car and followed after her, gaining on her until he was beside her. I'll go in with you, he said.
Don't you want to go home?
Not right away.
Rachel said, You opened my note.
Yes, he said.
These are just ordinary errands. I have to shop and get some medicine at the drugstore and take the clothes over to the laundrette. And I have to clean and sweep.
She glanced apprehensively up at him.
Do you think you would want to have lunch with me? You didn't have much breakfast.
Okay, he said. She walked ahead of him, down the steps to the basement door.
First I have to clean,
she said, opening the door. It was not locked, he saw.
I have to vacuum the floor. We got this old vacuum cleaner. I was going to clean yesterday, but I didn't want to while you were around.
She opened all the windows and doors in the apartment, and then she dragged an obsolete upright vacuum cleaner from the closet. While the machine rattled and shuddered, he stood outdoors on the cement path.
You want to move the couch for me?
She said, shutting off the vacuum cleaner. Be glad to. He lifted the couch away from the wall.
You sound so mournful,
she said. No, I'm just thinking.
Does this bother you, this cleaning?
No. Again he went outside.
I don't have to do this, Rachel said. I just wanted something to do. I can't stand sitting around like we were, just talking. It's a waste of time.
After she had vacuumed the floor and rugs and curtains and cushions of the couch, she put the vacuum cleaner away and began to wash the dishes in the sink. Your note was eloquent, he said to her.
Well,
she said, her arms in soap suds,
I thought you were leaving, and I had that to give to you the last minute or so, just before you took off. Otherwise, you wouldn't know. You'd think I was just after some arrangement so I could be sure of a place to stay, you know?
I know, he said.
And I mean it, she said, the way I feel.
It's too bad, he said.
Why?
I was afraid that was behind it.
It shouldn't make you afraid. You ought to be glad. Don't you feel very strongly about me?
Yes, he said.
Maybe something will come of this,
she said, rinsing out the sink and then drying her hands and arms. With a rag and a can of Dutch cleanser, she began scouring the bowl and faucets in the bathroom. After everything you said, he said, you still believe what you see in the movies.
What's that?
True love wins out.
Sometimes it does.
Very seldom.
But it can,
she said. Why? Does it shove everything else out of the way? Rachel said,
If I was married to you, I'd have a lot of children. That's something she's never done.
You're wrong, he said.
I know I would.
She put her hand on her stomach.
You can see.
Not my children, he said. I'm sterile. She straightened up.
Really?
So what you said is just a little silly.
I thought it was her,
Rachel said.
But it doesn't matter. I have a baby already. It would be the same as yours.
She went back to her methodical scrubbing. That's why Pat and I broke up, he said.
Yes, Rachel said. I believe it. She needs children she can take care of, so she won't have time to sit around and feel sorry for herself. I don't see how you can talk about going back to her. If you can't have children, it'll never work out. She'll be sitting around drinking and brooding, and she'll start crying and wishing she had kids, and then she'll leave again. But you know I wouldn't do that.
I know, he said, and it was true. It probably was.
We'd have a child, Rachel said. At least one. Maybe I'll have twins. Art has a brother. My mother has a twin brother.
Putting away the can of Dutch cleanser and the rag, she said,
The hospital would charge more if it were twins, but I'd like to have more than one child if I could.
How much do the hospitals charge for a delivery, he said.
Do you mean a normal delivery, without complications? Usually from $150 to $300. It depends on whether you want a private room.
A private room is more, he said. I know that.
If they have to use instruments, Rachel said, even forceps to force delivery, then they call it an operation and charge for an operation. So that could cost anything, depending on the circumstances.
How long would you be in the hospital?
Not very long.
She looked in the refrigerator to see what she needed to buy.
3 days or 4. It depends on how quick my delivery is and how I stand up under it. I haven't had any children before, so I'll probably have a hard delivery. And I'm small. I'll probably have a lot of false labor, maybe a couple of days of it.
How long before you have the baby will you have to quit your job?
It depends on how I feel. The problem is when I get back. I can't go to work after I have the baby. I'm going to stay home.
She had made out her shopping list. Now she wheeled the shopping cart from the corner of the kitchen.
You want to walk down to the store with me?
As they walked slowly along the sidewalk, he said, Do you feel different about me?
Because you can't have children? Yes, I guess so. You didn't know before you and she were married, did you?
No, he said.
But I know, Rachel said. So it wouldn't be the same. Like, you know about me, you know about Art. You know I liked him enough to marry him, and the baby is his. But that's not so bad, is it? You can have a child this way. It would be the only way.
I thought of that, he said.
When?
The first night I stayed with you.
Yes, she said. I knew you were thinking about something, and it had to do with the baby. You want to, then?
She turned toward him.
You want to marry me as soon as we can get it fixed up? It would be a year or so, and the baby would already be born, but we could be together most of that time.
We could, he agreed. To their right was a fruit and vegetable market. She pushed her shopping cart through the doorway, and he followed. At the bin of lettuce, she examined the heads. She weighed them and stripped off the outer leaves. After she had found the lettuce she wanted, she began filling a paper bag with squash. "Morning, young lady," the old man at the counter said as she brought up what she wanted to buy.
"Hello,"
she said. At the counter were tomatoes. She took 2 of them and put them with the green onions and celery. To Jim she said,
"I want to make a salad for you."
"Is that something you're good at?"
"I'm not too bad,"
she said, paying for what she had bought.
"I have to get some Italian cottage cheese. Have you ever had any? It's called ricotta."
At the delicatessen, she stood at the glass counter, scrutinizing the sausages and cheeses. The clerk recognized her and greeted her. They all recognized her, the old Italian grocery store owners, the people behind the meat and fish counters. This was her route. With her shopping cart, she went from store to store, looking into everything, finding out what was good. "Here," the clerk said to her, giving her a wedge of the white Monterey Jack cheese. "See what you think." She tried it.
"No,"
she said.
It's too mild.
You want it for a salad? The clerk found her some cheddar.
That's fine, she said, and the ricotta.
She paid the clerk, put the packages in her shopping cart, and then they went outside. They let you try stuff? Jim said.
If you don't ask them, she said. If you just stand looking. Do you like how it smells in there? It's the garbanzo beans and the olive oil and spices, and the different sausages. I can't usually afford to buy any of the sausages.
They know you, he said.
I spend a lot of time in there.
At the supermarket, she bought brown rice and a pound of butter, which was on sale, and a quart of mayonnaise, which was also on sale.
They don't have eggs on sale, she said. Look, they want 60 cents a dozen. We'll have to go over to the Safeway and see.
Pushing her cart to the Checkers stand, she joined the line. He remained beyond the railing. Behind her was a large, elderly woman in a silk dress, and ahead of her were two colored women. Among the housewives and shoppers, she was confident. She smiled at him. You know how to shop, he said as they left the store.
I enjoy it.
Do they get in front of you? He asked. In the line? It did not seem likely.
They try, but you can tell before they do it. They get a certain kind of look.
At the Safeway, she bought eggs and coffee.
Now, she said, I want to go to the drugstore. Then we can go home and I'll fix lunch.
With a prescription in her hand, she waited by the magazines and chewing gum and display of razor blades. This was her element. The routine of shopping, the measuring, the judgment, the comparing of prices, one store with another, the cautious proceeding from one store to the next. On the trip back to the apartment, the shopping cart was weighed down with packages. Where'd you get it? He said, meaning the cart.
Art made it.
In the front room of the apartment, she unloaded the packages one by one onto the heavy oak table. She was careful with each, making sure that the eggs and tomatoes were undamaged. She had bought a package of berries, and now she carried them to the kitchen to wash them. Filling a pan with water, she lit the burner under it, and put in 2 of the eggs. She took out a large bowl and began fixing the tomatoes and lettuce and green onions for the salad. Seated at the kitchen table, with the bowl in her lap, she cut bits of celery and hard-boiled egg.
There's nothing they can do about your sterility? She asked.
No.
It won't change?
It won't go away, he said.
Rachel said, Do you think about it?
Sometimes, when I have nothing else to do.
It must make a man feel awful. What do? Do they find out by... I guess they can't use a rabbit.
They make counts on a slide, number of sperm per cubic centimeter. There has to be 60 million.
Were there?
Yes, he said, but too many of them were irregular, so they weren't fertile.
But there were some that were okay, weren't there?
If, he said, I had intercourse day and night over a period of years, I might conceivably impregnate some woman. Pat and I went to find out why we hadn't had any success, and that was the reason. It was my fault.
60 million sounds like a lot.
But statistically, he said, there just isn't enough of a chance. With the salad, she fixed cheese sandwiches.
I made the bread, she told him.
The bread was excellent.
Do you like the salad?
She said. Fine. He ate as much as he could. Across from him, she watched. She kept her eyes on him.
Do you think she went after Art because she knew he had had a child?
She said. Maybe. That's part of it.
It was to make up for you?
She did not seem embarrassed. I think she didn't know what to do, he said. She wanted to do something, and she felt she couldn't have anything to do with me. And then she ran into Art. Rachel said,
Don't you see how no good she is?
Let me decide that, he said. She nodded. It's up to me, he said.
Then decide.
Her eyes ignited. She gazed at him menacingly.
She's no good. She isn't. Why do you pretend she is? I don't see how somebody like you can get mixed up with her.
You have no charity, he said.
What's that? What do you mean?
She was suspicious. He said, You're too much of a Puritan, Rachel. You're too righteous.
Are you marrying her to get away from me?
No, he said.
Why then?
Because I love her.
You don't feel she's sort of public property by now?
No, he said.
Do you know what I meant by the note I gave you?
Yes, he said. I know. That's why I followed after you.
How do you feel about it?
He had no answer for that. Rachel said,
I think you ought to forget about her and marry me. Will you? I'd make you a good wife. Don't you think I would? Don't you think I'd do everything in the world to make you happy?
In his mouth, the words fell into bits. I can't say yes, he said finally.
What then? You mean you won't?
He knew that this was the last time she was going to ask. And, he thought, when he said no to her this time, it was finished. How much of a temptation it was, how close he was to saying yes. The hell with everything else, he thought. Surely this was worth more than all the rest of it.
Wait,
Rachel said. She put her hands up over her ears.
Don't say anything to me right now. Walk with me to this store. I want to look at some maternity clothes.
She collected the dishes and put them in the sink. Then, with her brown coat trailing, she went out of the apartment. He followed along, willing to go with her, wanting to be with her as long as he could. They both felt the same way. They loitered and moved reluctantly past the stores, across the streets. They looked at the window displays and people. Rachel entered stores and talked to the clerks. She poked into everything. By the time they reached the clothing store, the time was 3 o'clock. On the trip back, she said, Let's stop and have a Coke. Ahead of them was a hot dog counter. A radio played jump tunes. What do you want? He said, getting out change.
Just a Coke.
With her Coke, she leaned against the side of the stand, her coat over her arm, her package of clothes by her feet. She did not say anything to him. She appeared to be mulling over the things he had said.
Are you sorry for her? She said. Is that it?
No, he said.
Then I don't understand.
He said, How do you feel when somebody is helpless? Do you take advantage of them? With her straw between her lips, she studied him. She was listening, and she said nothing. Some people do, he said. Most people do.
It's their own fault if they're weak, she said.
Christ, he said.
If they're weak, then they disappear.
Isn't that evolution?
Isn't that the survival of the fit or something?
Sure it is, he said futilely.
What's wrong with that?
Nothing.
But you don't feel that way, she said.
I don't feel that way when I love somebody. If they're helpless and need help, I want to help them. You feel the same way. You said so.
No,
she said.
Did I?
You said I should want to take care of her.
But,
Rachel said,
she doesn't deserve it.
Let it go, he said.
Can't you tell me?
No, he said. I guess not.
Do you love her because she is weak? Is that it? You can't have children, so you want somebody you can take care of.
That's not it, he said.
You can look out for her.
Finishing her Coke, she put the empty cup down on the ledge of the window. She picked up her package and started off. That's some of it, he said. The rest of it is that she and I understand each other in a way I can't explain. You're trying to make this into a rational thing, and it isn't. I don't love her because she's helpless, any more than I might love you because you aren't helpless. I love her first, before anything else, and if she's helpless, I want to take care of her. If I were helpless, you would want to take care of me, wouldn't you? You'd be glad. It would make you happy. She nodded. You can see it in yourself, he said. That feeling is one of the strongest elements in you. You'll have a baby pretty soon, and maybe you can turn some of them on to him. And you have Art. God knows he can use some help. In the front yard of a house, in a fenced yard, a vast dahlia plant with shaggy cactus blossoms caught Rachel's eye. The blossoms were as large as plates. She went to the fence, and before he could stop her, she had reached over the fence and had broken one of the dahlias from its stalk. That's a mortal sin, he said. It's for you, Rachel said. Put it back. It won't go back. She held out the dahlia, but he refused to accept it. An elderly, heavy-set woman was sweeping the walk by the house, and when she saw the flowers, she hurried toward them. What is this? She demanded, wheezing with outrage. The wattles of her neck lifted and fell. "You people have no right to steal flowers out of other people's yards. I think I'm going to call the police and have you arrested." Rachel handed the dahlia to the old woman. Without a word, the old woman snatched the flower, picked up her broom, and went inside the house. The screen door slammed shut after her. As he and Rachel walked on, Rachel said, "Who am I supposed to look out for?" Suddenly she stood up on tiptoe and kissed him. Her lips were dry and chapped. "I don't have anybody." Again she kissed him, and then she let him go. "That's all I can do," she said. "Isn't it?" He said, "Take the poor kid back." "No," she said. "Relent just a little." On her face emotions appeared and were suppressed. She struggled inside herself. She fought it out inside. "Give him this feeling you have," he said. "That's where it belongs. He's your husband, and the baby is his." "It's yours," she said. "No," he said. "I wish it was, but it isn't. It isn't mine, and you aren't mine." "I am," she said. He said, "I can't marry you, Rachel. I'll pay for your baby if you'll let me. You want me to do that? And if you don't want to keep the baby, if you're by yourself and you feel you can't keep it, maybe we can adopt it." "You and Pat?" "Maybe, if you decide you don't want it." "I want it," she said. "It belongs to me." "That's good," he said. "You can't have it," she said, "without me. You have to take both of us." "Then it's out," he said. For the rest of the walk back, she did not look at him or say a word. At the door of her apartment, as she fitted her key into the lock, she said, "Would she take care of you?" "I hope so." "Tell her to go on the wagon." "I will," he said. "Maybe if she didn't drink, she'd be okay. I can't see how a woman can drink like that." She started into the apartment. "I have to get ready for work. I have to say goodbye." "Goodbye," he said. He touched her hair, and then he went off, up the steps to the path. Still at the door, she said, "If you're going to marry her, I want to give you a present." "Just go find your husband," he said. But she was already coming up the stairs. "What would she like?" she asked. Her face was grim and intense. "Maybe I can get her some kitchen thing. I wouldn't want to get her any clothes. She knows more about clothes than I do. Just wish us luck." Rachel took hold of his hand. "Can I hold on to you? Just for a while? You don't mind, do you?" Together, holding hands, they walked until they came to a Woolworth dime store. "No," she said, stopping. "This isn't any good." After a time, they came to a jewelry store, and she started in. "You can't afford any of these things," he said, halting her. "If you're serious about this, buy one of those cards." "Are you going to have a party?" "I don't know. Maybe." She went into the jewelry store to the front counter. "I only have $3 or $4, she said to him. In the front counter were a number of silver and silver-plated articles, and she had the clerk bring them out one by one for her inspection. After much consideration, she bought a cake server and had the clerk wrap it as a gift. "She'll like that," she said, as they left the jewelry store. "Won't she?" "Sure," he said. "Did you look at it?" Rachel said. "It was made in Holland. It isn't big and ornate like most of them." At her place, she unwrapped the cake server and rewrapped it with her own wrapping paper and ribbon and seals. "This is better," she said, curling the ribbon with the blade of the scissors. "I worked a couple of Christmases at this department store downtown. I wrapped packages." Into the ribbon she put a stalk of gladiola and some green leaves. She used Scotch tape to hold them in place. "Very pretty," he said. She put the package into a paper bag. "This is for both of you," she said. "Thank you," he said, accepting it. "I better not come along," she said. "Maybe not." Following him to the door, she said, "Can we come over and visit you?" "Any time," he said. At the door she lingered, speaking slowly, not facing him. "Can I ask you something?" "Whatever you want." "Maybe this is a favor. I wondered if you had decided to go back on your program." "You want me to?" "If you do," she said,
Then we can listen to you again.
I'll go back.
Fine.
She nodded.
I'd like to hear you. I always felt better listening to you. It always seemed to me you really cared about us.
I did, he said. I do.
Even now? Right now?
He said, certainly.
Goodbye,
she said. She put out her hand, and he took hold of it. Thanks for the lunch, he said. Thanks for cooking for me.
I cook pretty good, she said, don't I?
Very good. She walked away. After a moment, he went on outside the apartment and up the stairs.
Wait, Rachel said. You forgot to take this.
In her hand was the present, the brown paper package. Going back, he took it from her. This time she watched him as he left. Behind him, she came out into the doorway and stood until he had gotten into his car and started the motor. As he drove away, he saw her. She did not cry. She showed no emotion in the least. She had accepted things, and now she was planning. She was deciding what to do. She was working out the problems and difficulties, considering herself and her husband, her job, the future of her family. Even before he was out of sight, she was busy at work. The time was 4 o'clock in the afternoon when he parked in front of his apartment house and started up the steps. The door of his own apartment was unlocked. He opened it and found the apartment dark, the shades pulled down, the room silent. "Pat?" he said. By the record cabinet the phonograph hummed, and on the turntable the stack of records revolved on and on. He shut the machine off and put up the window shades. The room was smeared with paint. On the furniture, the walls and drapes, the paint shone. The paint had been smeared by hand. Her prints were everywhere, the childish outline of her thumbs and palms. She'd gone about pressing her hands against everything she touched. The easel and brushes and tubes lay in a chaotic heap on the floor by an overturned glass. Red paint trailed across the rug, and he thought suddenly that it was not paint but blood. He bent down and touched it. The paint was sticky and hot. It was both paint and blood, mixed together and spread throughout the apartment. She was not in the bedroom, but the paint and blood were there, too, on the bed covers and walls. "Pat," he said. He felt alert and rational. He went into the kitchen. In the corner of the kitchen, crouched against the cupboards, she stared up at him. She was covered with blood and paint. Her clothes dripped shiny, sticky red, the warm mixture from the tubes and from her body. As he approached, she lifted her hand up at him. Her hand shook. "What is it?" he said, kneeling down. "I cut myself," she whispered. By her was a kitchen knife. She had cut almost through the flesh of her hand to the bone itself. A handkerchief, soaked with blood, was tied around her wrist. At the cut, the blood was thick and drying. The bleeding had slowed to an ooze. She gazed at him piteously, her lips apart. She wanted to say something. "When did it happen?" "I don't know," she said. "How?" "I don't know." "Does it hurt?" he said. "Yes," she said. Her face was stained with tears that had caked and dried. "It hurts a lot." "Did you do it on purpose?" "I don't know." On the drain board of the sink were melted ice cubes, a lemon, the remains of the gin. He said, "I should have come back sooner." "What'll I do?" she said. "You'll recover," he said, stroking her hair back from her face. Blood and paint sparkled in her hair. Red drops stuck to the hair. Paint streaked her face and neck, her arms. She had paint on her shirt and jeans, on her feet, and on her forehead was a dark bruise. "I fell," she said. "Is that when you cut yourself?" "Yes," she said. "You were carrying the knife?" "I was taking it into the living room." "I'll drive you over to some doctors," he said. "No," she said. "Please." "You want me to get him to come here?" "No." She shook her head. "Just stay here." "I'll have to bandage it," he said. "Okay." From the medicine cabinet in the bathroom he got gauze and tape and mercurochrome. The cut was clean. It had bled enough, certainly. As he washed her hand and put on the mercurochrome, she did not seem to feel pain. She seemed numbed. "You're damn lucky," he said. Pat said, "It hurt a lot." "Be careful. Don't carry knives around." "Are you back for good?" "Yes," he said. He helped her up, and with his arm around her, led her into the living room. She clung to him. "I thought I was going to die," she said. "It kept on bleeding." "You couldn't have died." "Really?" "Not from that. Kids do that all the time. Kids fall out of trees and cut their hands and skin their knees." When she was stretched out on the couch, he dipped a handkerchief in turpentine and started cleaning the paint from her hair. "I thought I was going to bleed to death," she said. When he had finished with her hair, he found her a clean shirt and helped her put it on. "Here," he said when she had finished. "Here's a present." He gave her the package with its wrappings and gladiola and leaves and curled ribbon. "For me?" Pat said, unwrapping it. He had to help her. "Who from?" "Rachel," he said. She lay with the cake turner on her lap, the wrappings in a wad beside the couch. "It's nice of her." "You sure got paint everywhere." "Will it come off?" "Probably so," he said. "I guess you're mad." "I'm just glad you're alive," he said, gathering up the wrappings from the package. "I'll never do it again." He put his arms around her and held her against him. She smelled of paint and turpentine. Her hair was damp, and her throat, close to his face, was mottled with blue and orange paint, a stain from her ear to her collarbone. He held her tightly, but she was solid and her body did not give. Fastening the top button of her blouse, he said, "The next time I'll stay here." "Will you? You promise?" "Yes," he said. He sat on the couch, holding her until the room became dim. The warmth of the room dissipated, but he remained where he was. At last, the room was totally dark. Beyond the window, the traffic sounds diminished. Streetlights came on. A neon sign flashed. In his arms, she was asleep. 20. Sunday was the final day of the optometrist's convention at the St. Francis Hotel in San Francisco, California. By 10 o'clock that night, many of the optometrists were beginning to say goodbye and trickle out of town by car, bus, train, however they had arrived at the start of the week. Their hall in the hotel was littered with paper and cigarette butts, and along the wall were empty bottles. Here and there, small groups of optometrists shook hands and exchanged addresses. The inner circle that had gathered around Hugh Collins met for their secret and expensive last fling of entertainment at Ed Guffey's hotel room, in a less publicized and less strict hotel in the Negro slum business section near Fillmore and Eddy Streets. In all, there were 11 men in the inner circle, and every one of them was damp with eagerness. Hugh Collins cornered Tony Vakuhi, who was already in Guffey's hotel room when the group arrived. "Where is she?" Vakuhi said. "She's coming. Keep your pants on." All week he had been nosing near Thisbe, but this night, this concluding interlude, promised to be the one. Louise, to his relief and delight, had obligingly remained in Los Angeles. Everything was set. He could scarcely contain himself. "All set?" Guffey said, smoking on his cigar. "She's supposed to be coming," Collins said, rubbing his upper lip with the back of his hand. This beat anything. The gewgaws from Mexico that he had distributed among the boys, the art films he and Guffey had got from the amusement park people, his own scrapbooks of models and sun-worshipping nudists. "Is it going to be worth all the loot?" Guffey demanded. "It sure is," he said. "You bet your bottom dollar." He began to pace restlessly, wishing she would show up. The optometrists were murmuring, exchanging wisecracks and jokes, punching one another. Some of them had their gewgaws with them, and were putting the plastic figures through their paces. But the boys were tiring, seeking the genuine article. One of them cupped his hands and catcalled at Collins. "What say, fella? About ready?" "About," he said, perspiring. Another yelled, "Where is this pig?" "Hey, hey," they chanted. "Bring on the greased pig." "Keep it down," Guffey warned. The optometrists, squatted in a circle on the floor of the hotel room, chanted in unison, "Bring it on, bring it on." One of them got up and began to shimmy in his nylon shirt and pinstriped trousers. His tie flopped foolishly as he placed his hands behind his head and wiggled his fleshy hips. And then they were silent. The optometrists ceased their horseplay. The joke stopped. Nobody moved. Thisbe Holt, in her transparent plastic bubble, rolled into the room. An audible gasp went up from the optometrists. Vakuhi in the hall had booted her in through the open door. He now shut the door and locked it. The bubble came to a stop in the middle of the room. Thisbe filled the bubble completely. Her knees were drawn up, hugged to her stomach. Her arms were wrapped around them, clutching them tight. Her head was bent forward. Below her chin and above her knees, her bloated breasts jutted up and were flattened at the inner surface of the bubble. The bubble rolled a little more. Thisbe was now face down, her buttocks visible, the two bare, divided hemispheres. A distortion of the plastic made them seem to spread out against the bubble surface. Again the audible gasp went up. One of the optometrists pushed the bubble with his shoe. It rolled, and the forward side of Thisbe returned. Her nipples, enlarged by the transparent surface, were blood-red splotches, smeared and caught. She was smiling. Oh, God in heaven, Hugh Collins thought, and his avidity made him shiver. All of them, all in the circle, were twitching and grimacing. A St. Vitus dance moved through the room. "Look at those tits," an optometrist said. "Wow, get the size of them." "Turner," an optometrist said, "so her ass is up." The bubble was shoved. It revolved, and again the underside of Thisbe was visible. "Look at that flesh," a voice said. "Can you get the bottom up?" one of the optometrists said. "You know, from down under, so we can look up." Several of them delicately tapped the bubble. It rolled too far, and again they were staring at Thisbe's knees and breasts. "Try again," Guffey said, down on his hands and knees. They tried again. This time they were able to get the bubble just right. "Wow-wee," an optometrist breathed. "Look at that." It was unbelievable. They nudged the bubble from one side of the ring to the other. Thisbe, magnified and distorted, rolled toward them and away from them as the bubble turned. Her leering face, breasts, knees, feet, buttocks came and went, a procession of steaming pale yellow flesh. The waxy surface rotated, and the inside of the bubble became translucent with her perspiration. Now her mouth was pressed to the breathing holes of the bubble's surface. She was taking in deep gasps of air. "Say," an optometrist said, "can we get her around in that different, so the hole is, at a different place?" But when they tried to turn the bubble, Thisbe turned with it. Hugh Collins, sitting on the floor, stuck out his foot as the bubble rolled toward him. He had taken off his shoes. Most of the optometrists had, and now he booted the bubble with his bare foot. The bubble was warm, heated up by the woman inside. It was like kicking her bare flesh. He giggled. On the far side, Ed Guffey kicked the bubble back. "Over here," an optometrist yelled, his feet up and ready. The bubble started in his direction. "Mine," another yelled, sticking his hand in the path. The bubble rolled over it, and he squawked. Faster and faster rolled the bubble. Thisbe, her mouth to the holes, wheezed and struggled for air. The mists rising from her flesh rose up and obscured her. A glimpse now and then, they saw the blood-red nipples, the spheres of her behind, the soles of her feet pressed to the inner surface. "Oh, boy," an optometrist shouted, lying full length on the floor. "Roll it over me. Go ahead." The orgy mounted. It came to an end abruptly when one of the optometrists conceived the idea of pouring a Dixie cup of water through Thisbe's breathing holes. "Okay," Tony Vakuhi said, stepping forward to take charge. "That's enough. It's over." Spluttering, flushed, Thisbe climbed from the bubble. "Goddamn beasts," she said, standing up and flexing her legs. Tony threw her a robe, which she buttoned around her. "Is that all?" Guffey demanded, chewing angrily on his cigar. "For $200, another optometrist said. "We ought to at least get to Gooser." Tony herded the girl out of the room, keeping the optometrists off with his shoulders. The door to the hall slammed. He and Thisbe were gone. "What a robbery," Guffey said. In the center of the room, the empty bubble remained. Hugh Collins scrambled out into the hall and after Thisbe and Vakuhi. "Wait a minute," he panted, catching up with them. "What is it?" said Tony unsympathetically. Thisbe, beside him, was muttering an uninterpreted flow of abuse. You had your fun. You got what you paid for. Wait, Collins said. Let me talk to her alone for a second. What do you want to say? Vakuhi said. You can say it in front of me. Come on. We don't have all night. I got to rub her down. I had the impression, Collins said, glancing at her prayerfully. You know, the motel room. This is the last night. Get him, Thisbe grated, and she and Vakuhi disappeared out onto the street. Collins, humiliated, slunk back to Guffey's room. When he entered, the optometrists were in an uproar. Some wanted to go out on the streets looking for fun. Others wanted to give up and go home. One was on the phone calling for a cab. He had a cab company which he claimed would transport them en masse to a halfway decent house of prostitution. Guffey was examining the empty bubble. Look at the size of this thing, he said to Collins. You could get a couple 100 pounds of stuff into this. Like what? Collins said, uninterested. Anything. Say, I think I've got an idea for some fun. He drew Collins over to the bubble. Look, you can seal it up. Maybe it'll leak a little, but not much. He fitted the section back into place, closing the slot through which Thisbe had entered and left. The optometrists gathered to see what was up. Like the old water bomb, Guffey said, making a pow motion with his fist in his palm. Smack, right off the roof, and then we get the hell out of there. By God, Collins said, struggling to salvage something from the collapse of his schemes. Right. One big grand slam. Something they'll all sit up and notice. Hell, we'll be out of here in a couple of hours or tomorrow at the latest. What do you say? For old time's sake. They experienced the sentimental tug. They were bound together in this parting hour of their comradely union. Not for another year. Not until 1957. Who knew the changes in a year? Ah, the bonds of the old pals. Go out with a bang, Guffey said. Right? So they'll know us. That was back in 56 when the boys dropped the bubble from the roof. Remember that night in 1956? That's tonight, boys. We're having that great old night right now. This was optometrist history. This was a milestone in convention roguery. How are you going to fill it? Collins demanded. Where are we going to get 200 pounds of crap this time of night? Guffey laughed. Let's get started. It's a cinch. That's the trouble with you guys. No imagination. They collected ashtrays, a couple of small table lamps, toilet paper from the bathroom, a pair of old shoes, beer cans and bottles, and dropped them into the bubble. It was only a beginning. Here's what we do, Guffey said. You fellows get outside and pick up stuff, whatever'll fit in. Tin cans, anything you see. Get back here in 20 minutes. He set his watch. Right? In 20 minutes, the optometrists straggled in. Some with nothing. Some more soused than when they had left. A few with armloads. At a supermarket still open, they had bought dozens of eggs, aging vegetables, quarts of milk. At a drugstore, they had picked up tin wastebaskets, a set of cheap dishes, some empty cardboard cartons. One optometrist had picked up a trash dispenser from a street corner. Another had lugged back in his car a garbage pail from the doorway of a locked-up restaurant. They dumped everything into the bubble. Space remained. Water, Guffey said, from the bathroom. They rolled the bubble to the bathroom and managed to get it near enough to a faucet to fill the remaining space with water. Gushing and dribbling, the bubble rolled about the bathroom. Water spurted from Thisbe's breathing holes. Hurry, Guffey ordered. The optometrists, perspiring and grunting, rolled the bubble from the room to the stairs. There they hoisted it up and lugged it, step by step, to the top floor of the hotel. The door to the roof was unlocked, and they rolled the bubble out onto the asphalt surface, and to the edge. Below them was the street, the cars and neon signs and pedestrians. His hands slippery with water and egg and milk, Guffey said, Here we go, boys. They lifted the ponderous, rubbish-filled bubble over the railing and let it go. Scatter, Guffey shouted, and the optometrists, without waiting for the results, ran back down the stairs. In a moment they were scrambling from the back door of the hotel to the parking lot in their cars. Ludwig Grimmelman, within his third-floor loft, felt the stir of the night, and knew that he could not evade the elements around him. He could not escape reality. In his heart he knew that they got everyone sooner or later, and they would get him. They would have him, and there was nothing he could do to save himself. He put his eye to the slot and saw out onto the dark evening street. He saw the shapes and shadows, the objects in motion. He saw the figure move across the street, and he knew that Mr. Brown of the FBI had him. Mr. Brown was there in the obscurity, waiting. Mr. Brown had caught him, and he was going to destroy him. There was no mercy for the Ludwig Grimmelmans. He thought to himself that his mistake had been to believe that by putting it off a short while, by delaying and protracting, he had got away with something. But he had got away with nothing, because now they had him even more completely than ever. They would not settle for anything less than the disposition of Grimmelman and his hopes and fears. And he was not prepared to give that. He had withheld himself, and he would now give up. He would not surrender merely because his situation was hopeless. The people who had met him and watched him thought that he was a kind of nut. But he was not a nut, and Mr. Brown knew that. Mr. Brown had looked for him and found him, and he had spent a great deal of time in this job. There was not that much time to waste on nuts. But, he thought, Mr. Brown was not going to tell anyone, and that was part of the situation. He put on his black wool overcoat and his paratrooper's boots, and then he activated the emergency alarm hidden under the corner of his work desk. An Army Signal Corps transmitter, bought from a surplus supply store, put out a coded message in response to his act. Joe Mantilla, in his room at the back of his family's house, received the message and knew that the time had arrived. Now, nothing remained but the escape itself. He had already destroyed the vital papers, documents, maps, and clippings. Leaving the loft light on, so as not to tip off Mr. Brown, he opened a side window and tossed out a descent cable. A moment later, he was going down hand over hand. His feet touched the ground, and he released the cable. It was drawn back up into the loft by a spring. The night was dark, and he felt the invisible motion. He was aware of the comings and goings, the messages alive in the air. Climbing a fence, he dropped into a yard. He went up a driveway, hunched over and running, looking back to see if Mr. Brown had followed. Nobody had seen him. He sneaked over fences. He ran by houses, across lawns, in and out of yards, creeping and hurrying and climbing, and gradually making his way across town toward the flat industrial section. Pausing for breath, he looked back. He studied the darkness behind him. Then he went on, his black coat billowing and his boots slapping the pavement. A car rolled by, its headlights blinding him, and he hid behind a parked truck. Was it them? Had they seen him? He ran on, down a driveway and over a fence. When he reached the corrugated iron shack, the motor of the horse was already on. Noise and fumes filled the shack as he slid the door open. Joe Mantilla stepped out and said, "All ready." "You have the transmission disconnected from the relay?" Grimmelman said, snorting. "It's all finished. Ferd is out in the Plymouth. Who goes with you in the horch?" Grimmelman said, "Take the Plymouth and go on back." He got into the horch behind the wheel. "This is a negative situation. If I manage to break through the police apparatus, I'll contact you. Otherwise, assume that the organization has ceased to exist." Joe Mantilla stared at him. "Do you think we had a chance?" Grimmelman said. "Sure," Mantilla said, nodding. Shifting into gear, he drove the horch from the shed and out onto the street. Joe Mantilla raced past him and across to the Plymouth. The horch turned right, and he was going in the direction of the freeway leading out of San Francisco. Wind rushed at him as he drove. From his coat pocket, he took out his goggles and fitted them over his eyes. On Van Ness Avenue, he made a right turn. 2 blocks later, a San Francisco police car fell in behind him. Grimmelman saw the police car, and he realized that he was not going to get away. But he had realized that already. He put his foot down on the gas, and the horch moved ahead. He got down in the seat as low as possible and gave the engine more and more gas. The police car continued to follow. The siren, softly at first, began to wail. The red light behind him blinked on. He saw it, blinking, blinking. The light peered at him. Along Van Ness, the other cars pulled to a stop, and he was the only object in motion. He drove faster. How cold the night air was. He tugged his coat around him and held onto the wheel with one hand. Wind whipped at him, and for a moment he could not see. He put his hand up to straighten his goggles. Ahead of him, a second police car appeared from a side street, and Grimmelman drove across the double line to avoid hitting it. The police car disappeared behind him, and he drove back into his own lane. In that instant, the horse sideswiped a car that had halted for the siren. A fender tore away, and Grimmelman spun the wheel. Again the horse veered to the left. A shape, its headlights white and immense, grew directly in the path of the horse. Grimmelman threw up his hands, and the massive horse crashed into the lights. Behind him, the police sirens whined to silence. The two police cars appeared to his right. Grimmelman clambered from the wrecked horse. His coat was torn, and a gash across his neck dripped blood. He ran a few steps and stumbled on the curb. Then he was up on the sidewalk, and one of the police cars had started after him. Still he ran. He did not slow down or stop. The signs along Van Ness Avenue were off, and he hid in the darkness of a used car lot. Before him was a tower, and he crept past it. He slid behind a car as two policemen hurried by with flashlights. As soon as they were gone, he crawled to the front of the car. From his coat he took a jumble of wires and keys. He fiddled with the lock of the car door. The door opened, and he crept inside the car. Closing the door after him, he lay on the seat with his head down beneath the dashboard. He opened a knife and sawed through the insulation of the ignition cable. Down the street at Herman's garage, Nat Emanuel and Herman were working together, pulling the head off a 1947 Dodge that belonged to Nat's auto sales. "Hey," Nat said, "what's the racket?" He walked to the entrance of the garage, peering to see. At first, he saw only the two police cars, and then he saw one of them move on farther along the street. He saw the wrecked cars, the horse, and the car it had struck. "Jesus," he said. "What's going on?" Herman said, coming up beside him. Peering, Nat saw the two policemen hurrying along the sidewalk with flashlights. The policeman passed Looney Luke's lot, and Nat, still watching, saw the shape creep from behind the tower to the row of cars, and then into one of the cars. He saw the door open and shut. He saw Grimmelman inside Looney Luke's car, fiddling with the ignition. "He's stealing one of Luke's cars," Nat said. "Yeah?" Herman said. "Where?" "See?" Nat said. "He's in the car. Look at him. He's trying to jump the ignition cable." "He sure is," Herman said. Nat said, "I'm going to call the cops." "Why?" Herman said. "He's stealing one of Luke's cars." Herman said, "Don't call the cops." "Why not?" Nat ran back toward the phone. "So he steals one of Luke's cars," Herman said. "You damn fool. Luke's the biggest thief in San Francisco. Every car in that lot he stole in the first place. You know that." "It's against the law," Nat said. He disappeared into the garage, and Herman heard him dialing excitedly. "What's one car?" Herman said. "To Luke." He watched the figure within the car, trying to get the engine started. What kind of a man, he wondered, was Nat Emanuel? What a strange idea he had of what was right. How little Nat had learned. "Let him steal it," he said. But he was talking to himself. Parked off Van Ness Avenue in the Plymouth, Joe Mantella and Ferda Heinke witnessed the wrecking of the Horch and the capture of Grimmelman by the police. "It's gone," Ferda said. They drove with their headlights off, away from Van Ness Avenue. When they were safely on a side street, they switched on the lights and speeded up. "He sure didn't have a chance," Joe Mantilla said. "He never even got that car off the lot." For a half hour they parked at Dodo's, trying to decide what to do. If they stopped by the loft, they ran a risk. Neither of them said it, but the organization had ceased to exist. Now they hoped only to stay out of the hands of the police. "We better tell Art," Ferda Heinke said. "The hell with it," Joe Mantilla said. "I'm going home. We better not be seen together for a while. Suppose he goes over to the loft." "He stopped going there," Joe Mantilla said. "He's gone back home." But he backed the Plymouth onto Fillmore and made a left-hand turn. "I'll keep the motor going while you run and tell him." In front of the house, Ferda leaped from the car and ran up the walk to the basement steps. The lights in the living room were on, and he knocked on the door. Art opened the door. "What's going on?" he said, surprised to see Ferda Heinke. "They got Grimmelman," Ferda said. "Don't go near the loft." "How about the Horch?" "They got that, too. Better lie low for a while." He started back toward the Plymouth. "There's nothing we can do." Art waited until the Plymouth shot off, and then he went back inside the apartment. At the kitchen table, Rachel was writing a letter. "What was it?" she asked, putting down her pen. "Nothing," he said. "Did they get Grimmelman? I knew they would." She continued writing. "It's too bad, but you knew it was going to happen. I think it's a good thing as far as we're concerned, but I'm sorry for him." He seated himself across from her and leaned back until his chair was resting against the wall. "That's the finish," he said, "of the organization." "Good," she said. "Why?" "Because it was a mistake. What was Grimmelman trying to do? Fight them the way they fight? So naturally they won. If you fight them that way, they have to win. They have all the power. The thing we have to do is keep quiet and not let them notice us." "It's too late," he said. "I'm already down on the draft list." Rachel said, "But maybe they'll get tired and give up. They may decide it isn't worth it. If every time you're called we go down there and argue with them and keep stringing it out—" "Sometimes I feel like giving up," Art said, "and just saying, what the hell? Go ahead and draft me." "If they draft you, we won't make it." "Will we anyhow?" he said. "If we want to." "I sure want to," he said vigorously. Rachel said, "Did she buy you the clothes you were wearing when you came back? I never saw them before, and you didn't have any money." "She bought them for me," he said. "Even the suit?" She put down her pen. "Did she pick them out?" "Yes," he said. "It's a nice suit. I was looking at it. I guess she really liked you, and she wanted you to look nice." She beckoned him toward her. "See if there's anything you want me to change." Going over, he found that she was writing to Patricia. In the letter, she was wishing them luck in their marriage, and saying that she hoped the four of them could get together some day soon. He read the letter, and it seemed okay to him. Below his wife's signature, he signed his own name. Rachel folded the letter and put it in an envelope. "How do you feel?" she asked. Since his return, both of them had been under the weather. They were still hesitant in each other's presence. "Better," he said. "How would you feel," Rachel said, "if I worked full-time for a while, so we'd have more money?" "I don't think you have to." "It might be a good idea. Then there wouldn't be any chance that we'd have to ask somebody for help." She picked up her coat and put it over her shoulders. "You want to come with me?" "I'll mail it," he said, taking the letter. "Do you want to see them again?" "Sure," he said. "I don't care." "But we have to be careful," Rachel said. "Anything from outside could hurt us. Isn't that so? Anything that might come in and get between us again. There's so much danger that something that isn't real might come along, and they'd convince us it was important. You know? Something they made up, a bunch of words. They never stop. There's always something they're saying." Her face showed worry, a tight little face lined with concern. He kissed her, and then he walked to the door. "I'll be right back," he said. "Anything you want?" "Maybe you could pick up something," she said. "Maybe at Dodo's. Some ice cream." Following him, she said, "You know what I'd like? One of those pizzas." "Okay," he said. "I'll bring one back." He walked up the steps to the path, and then, his hands in the back pockets of his jeans, he turned in the direction of Dodo's. Against the pavement, his heels scuffed and clacked. In the cold evening wind, his black leather jacket flapped back, lifted up, and held. At the corner, he mailed the letter. Then he went on toward Dodo's. The drive-in was several blocks away, and he walked slowly, gazing at the bars, the closed-up shops, studying the cars that passed. He nodded to a couple of friends. At a corner, 4 guys he knew were lounging at the side of a drugstore, and he stopped to say a few words to them. Going on, he crossed the street and continued past a closed-up clothing store. Ahead of him was a group of people, and now that he looked, he noticed a parked police car. A police ambulance drew up to the curb, and he realized that something had happened. The group of people had collected at the entrance of the old Pleasanton Hotel. Bits of debris were littered across the sidewalk, eggshells, pools of liquid, lettuce leaves and stalks of vegetables and trash and broken dishes and crumpled paper. The ambulance attendants were carrying the stretcher onto the sidewalk, and the group of people were being moved back by a San Francisco cop. "What happened?" he said to a couple of kids standing at the edge of the group. "Some joker dropped a lot of crap off the roof," the taller of the kids said. "Yeah?" he said. They all watched, hands in their back pockets. "Every damn kind of thing." The kid bent down and picked up a fragment of glass. "Some sort of plastic." "Anybody get hurt?" Art asked. "This lady, she was walking along. It must have landed on her. I don't know. I just heard the noise." Art pushed up closer until he could see. The junk was heaped up on the sidewalk, and the remains of some globe-shaped transparent shell rested in the center of the debris and rubbish. A policeman was taking down information from an elderly gentleman with a cane. Stepping from the pavement, Art walked on past the ambulance and away from the group. As he reached the corner, a police car slid in front of him, and a light was flashed in his eyes. "Let's see your ID, kid," a cop said. While he was searching through his wallet, 2 cops stepped from the car and up to him. "How come you're out after 11 o'clock? Don't you know there's a curfew?" "I was mailing a letter," he said. "Where's the letter?" "I mailed it." He was still fumbling in his wallet. He started to reach inside his jacket to see if his packet of ID cards was there. Suddenly, one of the cops grabbed his hand. The other cop shoved him back against the wall. "What do you know about that stuff off the roof?" the first cop said. "What stuff?" "Off the hotel roof. Were you up there?" "No," he said, and his voice was thin, weak. "I was just coming by." He pointed back in the direction he had come. "I was out mailing this letter." "There's a mailbox back there." "I know," he said. "I mailed it." Another cop appeared with 3 more kids. Each of the kids was trembling and scared. "These were back of the hotel." He gave them a shove, and they stumbled forward. "They must have run out the back," a cop said. "Take them down," another cop said, already starting off. At the curb, the radio in the police car bellowed out calls and numbers. "They're out after the curfew. Book them on that until we get some kind of story from them." He was yanked away from the wall and shoved with the other kids into the police car. As the car pulled away and into traffic, he saw that the police were picking up more kids. More police cars were entering the block, and he thought to himself, "If I hadn't come out to mail the letter—" "Honest," one of the kids was saying, "we don't know nothing about it. We were just walking along." He was a Negro. "We were just going up to the drive-in, you know." None of the cops answered. Art, looking through the window, held on to his wallet and identification cards. The cops had not examined them. They had loaded him into the police car in too much of a hurry. He wondered if they would still want to see the cards. He wondered if they were going to ask him his name, or if they really cared. 21. During the weekend, the paint was scrubbed from the furniture and walls of Jim Briskin's apartment. The apartment, cleaned up, looked as it had before. Patricia put the easel and brushes and paints away in the closet, and neither of them said anything more about it. He let her do most of the cleaning and washing and scrubbing. In jeans and cotton shirt, her hair tied up in a turban, she sat on the floor working with soap and water, a bucket, a heavy brush. She did not seem to mind. All day Saturday and Sunday they kept at it. On Sunday evening they invited Frank Hubble over. The 3 of them drank wine and talked. "What happened to your hand?" Hubble said. "I cut it," she said, hiding her hand away. "Can you type like that?" Hubble said. "I'll do as well as I can," she said. Hubble said, "Are you 2 married again?" "Not quite," Jim said. "We have the blood tests. We'll pick up the license in a couple of days and then get married. There's no rush." "You're coming back to work tomorrow?" "Yes," Pat said. "On Monday." "How about you?" he said to Jim. "I'll be back," Jim said, "at the end of the month." "What happens when they give you a Looney Luke plug to read?" "I'll read it," he said. "Why?" "Because I want to stay on the air." Beside him, Pat shifted about. She drew her legs up and tucked them under her. "Jim is going to expand Club 17, she said, "so it runs in the evening. He's going to bring it back at 8 and keep it going until sign-off." "If I can," Jim said. "If Haynes can see it." "You going to spin a lot of rock and roll?" Hubble said. "The networks are starting to clamp down. You seen the latest list of banned discs? Mostly the small labels, the race and blues labels. Somebody showed me a BBC statement. They say they don't have a list of banned records, just a list of music they don't play." "Restricted," Jim said. "Yes, it's their restricted list. You better be careful on that stuff. You get the old ladies writing in. Better stick to the regular bands and tunes." "Guy Lombardo?" Jim said. Hubble laughed. "Why not? A lot of people like that sweet stuff. Look at Liberace. You'll draw a bigger audience with that. Rock and roll is on its way out. They've got Presley's number. In another 6 months, nobody will remember him." Jim got up and walked across the room to the phonograph. An LP of Bessie Smith had come to an end. He turned the record over. The old ladies, he thought. The same old ladies who had supported his classical music. They would be writing in. They would start the pressure. End of Side 6. To continue, change side selector switch and turn the cassette over.